Hey guys, today's a pretty exciting day to me because not only am I taking some portraits on a 100 megapixel sensor, but also on a medium format camera for the first time. So today, not only am I using the Hasselblad X2D2 camera, but I'm also using this new 35 to 100 zoom lens. And I'm really excited to use this lens because I've seen a lot of content on YouTube from this lens. It looks great, but not a whole lot using it for portraits. So not only am I excited to see how the lens holds up, but also what a medium format camera can do for portraits. So this new Hasselblad XCD35 to 100E is roughly a 28 to 76 full frame equivalent, so basically a 3x standard zoom, and right in the range of some of my favorite portrait focal lengths. Now, when I used this system, I expected great croppability, but what I didn't expect was to actually use it this much for portraits. So for this shot, I had a really specific idea in mind. I wanted to get up high and shoot down at Emma, zooming all the way into 100mm to really compress the scene so the ocean just looks huge in the image and just looks like it's right behind Emma. And at 100mm, it already looks great and it works, but when you zoom in, just look how clean that is. And because of the resolution from this Hasselblad X2D2 100C, you can push this way further in post to really exaggerate this effect. Cropping tighter than the lens obviously allows optically, with barely any noticeable drop in quality. Just to give you an idea, this full image from the Hasselblad is 11,656 by 8,742 pixels. And even after a pretty heavy crop like this, as you can see, I'm still left with a file that is 7,450 by 5,587 pixels. So to put that into context, even after that heavy crop, that's actually still higher resolution than the files I was getting from my Canon R6 Mark III at the same shoot. So even when you are cropping pretty aggressively, you're still ending up with more detail than most full frame cameras can give you natively. And something else that really helps when you do start cropping heavily like this is just how good this lens actually performs at the long end. Now, for transparency, this is the only lens that I've ever used on the Hasselblad system, but generally with standard zooms, in my experience, especially at the longest focal length, that's when they can start to kind of soften a little bit. But on this Hasselblad XCD35 to 100, at 100mm, it is seriously impressive. It stays really sharp, so it's great for close-up portraits. It renders amazing detail in skin and in eyes, as you can see in this shot. So yeah, you've got that ability to zoom in, of course, but what I love about a lens like this for portraits is just how versatile it is. On the wide end, so roughly 28mm full frame equivalent, it is perfect for environmental portraits, especially in tighter spaces like these alleyways in Malta, and that f2.8 aperture on medium format still gives you a nice pop to the image. And then of course you can go all the way through to mid-length portraits, right up to tighter, more intimate headshots, all in one lens. And honestly, as a single kind of do-it-all option, this has to be one of the best lenses in the system. And because it's medium format, you still get that really nice depth and separation at pretty much any focal length, which just adds to the overall look for portraits. And something else that really stood out to me in these shots is the color. These tight alleyways are just bouncing warm light everywhere in the scene, and normally skin tones can kind of blend into that, because that light's reflecting onto your model's face, and it's actually a bit of a nightmare to edit in post. But the Hasselblad X2D2 handles this really well. Skin tones still feel pretty clean and natural, and they separate nicely as possible from everything else in the scene, even with all of that warm light going on. Autofocus is also really impressive with this setup, especially when you consider that this is Hasselblad's first real go at continuous autofocus and any kind of subject tracking. For a first attempt, it genuinely surprised me. Now this is a big lens, so it's moving some pretty heavy glass, but the STM motor does a really great job. It tracks eyes reliably, even when they're pretty small in the frame and your subject's quite far away, and I was getting a really solid hit rate. Right, okay, so if you just want to take a few steps towards me, and I'll kind of walk back with you. You ready? 3, 2, 1, go. Yeah, this looks really cool. Nice. And now this is my first time using a Hasselblad system, so I can't compare it to their older cameras or other lenses, for example. But in terms of how it actually performs, it reminds me of something like the original Canon R5, which for photographing people and for portraits, that's a very good place to be for your first try. In general, there are a few things that really stand out as special with this setup, but probably the biggest one for me is the color science. The colors from this sensor are just exceptional. They're just incredibly accurate, really easy to work with, and just feel very true to what I was seeing on the day. And Hasselblad calls this their natural color solution, where each sensor is individually calibrated to produce consistent, true to life color. And honestly, it shows. Out of all of the systems that I've used, this Hasselblad is probably the closest I've ever used in terms of being able to capture a scene exactly as you see it on the day, especially when it comes to skin tones. The files are just really easy to edit as well. The skin tones look great straight away, and the color separation really stood out to me. It is absolutely excellent. And being 16-bit files as well, there's just a bit more depth to them, just loads of flexibility and a real thickness to the files if you want to push things in post. But to be honest, in a lot of cases, like in these shots, you probably won't need to. Now, this XCD 35-100 is a variable aperture lens, so it's f2.8 at 35mm and drops down to f4 at 100mm. And on paper, that might not sound that exciting for portraits if you're coming from full frame, but on medium format, it still gives you really strong depth and subject separation right throughout the entire range. Anything faster than f4 in a zoom lens is pretty much unheard of, to be honest, on medium format. And honestly, this lens has more pop than any f2.8 standard zoom that I've ever used on full frame. And the bokeh from this lens is really nice as well, especially towards the longer end. You just get loads of separation in portraits with really smooth fall off, and it does a great job of softening busy backgrounds. Like in this shot, for example, so Emma's actually sitting very close to the rocks behind her, almost against them. And this is normally a pretty hard situation to get any real kind of subject separation, and images can look pretty flat. But even here, the lens still does a great job of pulling her away from the background, just through really the combination of depth, contrast, and rendering. Right, so I'm in the studio and I'm going to be shooting some portraits today with the Hasselblad X2D2. And this is not only my first time ever shooting in the studio with a medium format camera, but also the first time that I've shot on such a high megapixel camera. And I've got a feeling that this 35-100 is going to be pretty much the perfect studio lens. A kind of 24 or 28-70 is what I usually always go for when I'm shooting portraits in the studio. So I can't wait to see how this combo does. Honestly, this lens just makes a lot of sense for studio work on the Hasselblad X2D2 100C. It's got to be the new kind of go-to lens for studio work because the wide end is great if you're working in tighter spaces, and then being able to zoom through to 100mm combined with the crop ability as well means it just gives you so much flexibility for headshots because you can shoot a little bit wider in terms of your framing, step right back from your subject to get a little bit more of a flattering look that you might get with 85 or 100mm on full frame, and you can crop in to that equivalent and sacrifice pretty much no image quality. The system worked perfectly with my strobe and autofocus was reliable, there was just no issues. Also, these Hasselblad lenses have built-in leaf shutters right in the lens, which has got to be so useful when using flash and strobes in outdoor situations. But more than anything really, this studio shoot just really reinforced the image quality for me. I have genuinely never had files this detailed and this sharp, with colours this clean straight out of camera. Controlled light, I feel, really shows off what this setup can do. This is probably the best setup overall that I've ever used in a studio setting. So yeah, that is the Hasselblad X2D2 100C, paired with the new XCD 35-100 and my experience using it for portraits for the first time. Now it's worth saying, this is my first real experience ever shooting medium format, digital or otherwise, so a lot of this is new to me, and I think that's kind of why the results stood out to me so much. And to be honest, what felt really refreshing using this was just using a system that clearly prioritizes the photography side of things for a change, because in the full frame world, where I usually sit, it can feel like a lot of the innovation from these camera companies lately is always pushed towards the video and hybrid shooters. And on the photo side of things, I mean, things haven't really moved on that much, especially in terms of actual image quality. Whereas with this, the step up is very, very obvious, whether it's in the detail or the dynamic range or the color, it just feels like a different level. But is it worth it for portraits? Well, first of all, it's expensive. There's no getting around that. The body and the lenses on this system is a serious investment. And the other thing is the files are very big, so you're getting all of that image quality, which is amazing, but it does come at the cost of storage and maybe workflow depending on the system that you use. So I've actually been editing some files from this on the new MacBook Neo, and in Lightroom and even in Hasselblad's own Focus software, it performs absolutely fine, even on something like the Neo. But if you're doing heavier edits, like heavy retouching and you use a lot of plugins, then you're going to need a decent system to edit these files. Ultimately, this feels like a system for people who are purely focused on photography and want to invest in a system and a company who are too. If what you care about is getting the absolute best image quality possible, and you want something that genuinely feels like a step up from full frame, this definitely delivers. Now, I'll be honest, I don't really feel like I've even had the full Hasselblad experience yet for portraits until I try one of their primes. So I've got my eye on that 55mm f2.5. That is like the perfect focal length for portraits for me, so I am dying to test that out at some point. But if you were going to run with just one lens on this system, not just for portraits, but for pretty much anything, and you don't mind the size of this lens, I think this 35-100 makes a really strong case. I've actually taken this setup with me on quite a few trips now, so there's so much more that I want to say about using this setup. And I've got a full video coming really soon where I really put it through its paces for travel, for landscape photography, and so much more. And in that video, I really want to share some raw files from this system so you guys can have a proper look at what this thing can do. So you don't have to just take my word for it, and maybe, you know, in case you think I'm exaggerating what I'm seeing with this being a sponsored video, you'll be able to download them and make up your own mind. But yeah, I'd love to know what you guys think of this system. Is medium format something that you'd consider for portraits, and do you think that it is worth it? Let me know down in the comments. But that's it for me. Thank you guys so much for watching, and I'll see you all next time.